welcome to another episode of Second Thoughts, Second Glances. This argument comes from the latest and greatest news of Joe Rogan talking on his podcast and spreading various levels of misinformation along with racist rhetoric and use of the N-word. And while we're not going to argue whether Joe Rogan is cool
a
or not.
Idiot? Yeah, okay. Yeah.
You heard it here first. We want to talk about the onus of corporations that host media like this. Argument one is the responsibility to pull the plug. Argument number two is the argument that you're allowed to be as opportunistic as you want and make as much money as you want, but in the realm of this specific Joe Rogan context. So I will put heads for you should be pulling the plug and have onus, and tails is make your bag, Spotify. Try to very equitably.
This coin, I gotta say, seems to be tipped in your favor, but go ahead.
Give room so you can see me. How about we'll say that was for me, and it's to argue Spotify is an opportunist, and you get the pulling the plug, okay?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It did really fall tails, but it hit my foot. I'll say that.
Yeah,
do you want to go first
coin
this time? I went first the last two times.
Okay, fine. I'll go first.
Go.
All right. So Spotify is a shitty company to begin with. I saw a Twitter post today, which is very, very true, is that, artists, musicians are pulling the plug, getting their music off Spotify now because of Joe Rogan, but they really should have been doing it all along because Spotify pays artists nothing. And they make money off of the fact of building a massive database catalog off the back of artists, and they pay them literally fractions of a fucking penny. So you have a company who has a history of doing nothing but making money off the backs of other people and not caring. So this is nothing new, and it should not be a surprise to people. But much along the lines of Fox News during the Trump presidency, you have a media outlet who is choosing to go ahead and make money off of something that they deem to be controversial or edgy under the guise of, well, it's free speech, we can't tell him what to do. And I disagree with that extremely. You as a media outlet who is making money off of the public needs to have a moral compass, and you do have an onus and a responsibility to make sure that what you are putting out there for the masses is at least factually correct. This man has a podcast that we all know. People consider Joe Rogan, unfortunately, to be a source of credible information. He has so-called experts that go on his show constantly. So therefore, you need to make sure and vet the content, and you have to hold the creator of this podcast responsible. And if he can't be responsible, then you need to stop the money, cut the bag off, and let him go. And if you're not willing to do that, that just makes you that much more irresponsible and that much more shady and shitty when it comes to how you treat people and your subscription buying public. So yes, Spotify should be pulling the plug and hold Joe Rogan to a higher standard.
So the other argument, which I'm going to have a very hard time doing, is that Spotify has no responsibility to monitor Joe Rogan. I will say this, and I do mean this sincerely. I think it's really unfortunate that people watching Joe Rogan take anything he says seriously, because I believe that even he knows he is saying bullshit to people that are very gullible and are just believing him. I think that he does not care what he's saying because he wants to make his bag. I think that Spotify is also aware that they are making mad money by letting him run his mouth in that way. And I suppose it is up to people to do the research and look into whether what people are saying is true or not, and not just believe Joe Rogan and his so-called experts, which would then allow Spotify to continue to let Joe Rogan run his mouth and say whatever he wants, because Spotify can absolve themselves of any guilt, because it is up to the people watching it to discern whether or not they believe what Joe Rogan is saying and whether it is factually true or not. And I suppose in a world of free speech, it's fine to let him continue to have this podcast despite all of the racist and harmful things he's said to Black people
and about Black people.
I will say, I don't know if you saw this, that Tom Segura posted a photo of him on one side Joe Rogan and on the other side Dave Chappelle, and he wrote, "Me, a comedian and a Black guy." And I was a little bit like, I suppose, sure, you're allowed to do what you want. You're allowed to do what you want, Spotify.
That was hard. I just see the
disassociate. Stress. I do the same thing when I explain my trauma in therapy. I just leave my body and I'm like, just recite phrases.